Hey, hi kids. How you guys doing? I'm out here in beautiful Lily, South Dakota. And I'm on my annual Highway 12 road trip that I take. Laura Sargent's here manning the camera. And you know, these road trips, they take place in July. South Dakota can be pretty hot. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about taking pictures during the summer. One of the first things we're going to need is protection, both on the outside and on our inside. And some things are pretty obvious for those of you who go out in the sun. One thing is maybe a skin protection of some type. So I've lathered my face. I don't care about my arms. In fact, I think it looks rather manly to have dark arms since I'm already kind of pasty and white. But I'll put this on my face so that I don't turn bright red by the end of the day, which I normally do. So I like to keep my face kind of protected. Another thing that you need are dark glasses. These are polarizing glasses, and they actually got little bifocals in them so I can read, because I'm old, so I need to read things. So they're very helpful for keeping that bright sun from hitting your face. But even with dark glasses, you need to have a hat on. Protect your scalp from the sun and to shade your eyes, just like you'd use a shade on your camera. So I've got my Highway 12 hat on. It's a nice hat. I use it for ceremonial purposes, but I have some other hats, which I'll get from the back of my car right now to show you what I usually wear for summer photographic journeys. So I got my Highway 12 hat on, which it's a lovely hat. Inspires us all to get into the mood of traveling from Minneapolis to Lily, South Dakota every summer in July. Take these pictures, but here's a hat that I really like that I ordered online. It's got an extra long bill. And this is nice. I like this. This really shades my eyes so I can focus in on my subject. However, it doesn't cover my ears very well, and I still get a lot of sun on my face. So I've got another hat here that's even bigger. And some say it gives me that roguish disposition, which desperately I need, especially at my age. So I've taken care of my head. I've got my nice suntan lotion on, although it's 100%, so I just want to stay white. And then what about your inside? When you're out in the sun over a long day, and our days go for about maybe 8-10 hours easily, photographing from morning till evening. We come back at 10 at night and eat a meal. You get dehydrated. So it's very important to have water. So I always carry a couple jugs of water, which I drink even while I'm driving the car. That technique I just showed you is how you drink moonshine in the South. So I always got my water with me. Sometimes you're going to need some water for a little sugar, so I bring soda pops and things like that. I won't pull that out because I hate to show you the brand names, but they're ubiquitous. You can find them anywhere across America. The other thing you're going to need is maybe some substance, because liquids, even with sugar, is not enough. You might want to get some nice something to stay solid in your stomach, like I bring a little food bag with me. And this one's from Paris. You can just bring a food bag from Aldi's. So in it I have things like cookies. These are little shortbread cookies. For those of you who don't believe in cookies, you might like to have a nice, lovely apple. Very good. And then I always bring a lot of nuts. Nuts are great for just chomping on, low cal, and got some salt in there. So, and then every now and then we'll break for and have a lunch, a real sandwich and things like that. So you got to have some food, you got to have some hydration in your body during the long day. And now there's some other considerations that we might want to think about for these summer adventures. So another protection from the sun invented a long time ago by the ancient Egyptians was the concept of what we call today an umbrella. An umbrella. Now the umbrella has certain advantages. The Italians got a great word for it, a parasol. That is, it's for the sun, a parasol. So we call it an umbrella. And it does protect you mightily. And I'm seeing more and more of this. And you can, if you're going to take a long time to set up a camera and you got to wait for the clouds to get right, or something like that, this would offer you a little relief of the shade. Of course, what you really need is an assistant. Now, the assistant, who's well paid, of course, would stand there and hold the umbrella over you while you're taking pictures in the heat of the sun. There's another advantage. Sometimes like out in South Dakota, we'll have for half a day the heat, the sun, huge storms come up. We see them in the horizon. Great thunderous clouds, lightning and thunder. And this would be a great time to take pictures, but who wants to get wet? Well, here's where your assistant could be very helpful, holding this umbrella over you and your camera while you're taking pictures. I've changed locations where the grass was kind of cut. But now here's an abandoned house here in Lily, and I'm going to go in and photograph around the house and then knock on the door and see if anybody's there. Maybe they'll invite me in for tea and crumpets, but I doubt it. So it's probably also abandoned, and then I'll just go in and take some pictures. I might avoid the second floor, because when you're on the second floor, you never know. And if you fall through, cell phone reception is bad out here. So you might be there for years, if not weeks or days or minutes, and be very uncomfortable. So anyway, I'm going to take off, but you'll notice there is some kind of tall grass. And to get at this house, I'm going to have to go through some weeds. And there's weeds all around the house because they don't mow it anymore. In that grass, you have a lot of little bugs. Most of the bugs don't bother you in any way, but there are things called ticks. And these ticks, they latch onto you, they crawl up your socks, and then if you don't have long pants on, they'll just crawl up your legs. If you got a lot of hair, they love hair, they'll crawl up your hair, and then eventually they attach themselves and sink their little heads into your skin, and then they'll start sucking your blood, and then they bloat up, and then as they bloat up, you might notice it and you say, well, what the heck is this? You might want to pull it off. I've heard the advice of, if you want to pull off a tick, you kind of get your fingernails close to the head there, twist it, and then pull it out. And then what you can do is, flush it down the toilet. You can light a match to it. You could eat it. That certainly wouldn't harm you, and it would also get rid of the tick. So long pants, very helpful if you're going to do a lot of shooting in high weeds and things like that. And the use of some sort of a bug spray. You can spray stuff on you to keep those bugs off. You can apply things by hand if it has some properties like DEET, is very helpful. And then, it's like sunscreen. You want to keep it out of your eyes. You want to, if possible, keep it also off your hands, because sunscreen and mosquito tick repellent can also get on your camera and lenses and things like that, and it's best not to do that. So having some wipes with you in the car can be very helpful. And then I think you're going to be about as protected as you can from invasive creatures attacking your bodies. I'm ready to head in there and take some pictures. And we'll be back soon. Help! Okay, I'm going to take a big chance and go in the middle of the street here. So kids, we're at the far end here of Lily. We're at the edge. Here's where their Lily cemetery is. And I'm photographing these rather silvery gates that have been freshly painted. You know, the heat of the day sometimes can really make the inside of your car, if you're traveling around with a car, turn into a real oven. So just like you don't want to keep dogs in the car when you're wandering around on the mall, you also might think about your equipment. So you have a choice. You can lock your car up tight as a drum, roll up the windows, and the heat will rise to about 120, 140 degrees inside your car. If you got chocolate in there, it's probably going to turn into liquid. And your car is safe. It's locked. Windows are all rolled up. 120 degrees. Now, oh, the sun's out. Wait, don't go away, kids. There we go. I just had to get that. So then, The other thing you could do is park in the shade. That's a good idea. The other thing you can do is keep the car open, lower the windows, keep the doors open if you're not going to be too long and you're not afraid of banditos crawling into your car and stealing valuable sandwiches. You want to remember that equipment, especially digital equipment, which I do not have a whole lot of, can really be damaged by high heat. And a film can also be damaged by high heat. This reminds me of the famous painter Georgia O'Keeffe, our great abstract expression painter from the 30s and 40s and 50s. So when she was working in New Mexico, she'd go out and paint in the hot sun. And then when it got really hot around noon, she would crawl into the car and just take a little siesta where it was cooler and she could bear it. And then when the sun went down, she'd go back out and paint some more. So keep that in mind with your equipment in your car. Now, I think I'll just flip this over and take one more picture because we call this a safety photograph. Safety. And the best precaution for anybody is to be safe. Smile. I heard them all smiling in there. The little teeth rattling in their cadaver heads. Okie doke. Okie doke. Das ist alles. Well, here it is. Had a long morning of shooting, running here, running there, trying to avoid the sun, but still looking for great things to photograph. Now we're going to take a little break. It's about 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Grab a little snack, take a breather before we all get back again to the road. And as we relax, we might take our shoes off. We might nourish ourselves up with some maybe little cookies, or there's some water. If the sun gets a little strong, we've got a little umbrella that we can, but some people like the sun. They drink it up. They need that vitamin D or C or whatever it is. So as we're sitting there, we might think about recharging our batteries. I take a fingernail file out occasionally, actually do my nails because they get all full of dirt, which is an odd thing, but that's me. We could also review our images if we have a digital camera. I don't. I think about how much film I got left before the day's over. And there you go. So relaxing's very important. And if you're going to fall asleep, I would find some really good shade in the under a tree, perhaps under a car. Don't let anybody start it while you're under there. Otherwise, it could be a disaster. But I think we got it here.
Okay.
Ready? Say the magic word.
Cut.
Well, kids, so far we've been talking about some of the difficulties of taking pictures in the summer and dealing with the heat and all that, staying hydrated. But, the reason we're out there is to actually take pictures, and the aesthetics of summer photography can have its own challenges. I think one of the things that we need to consider is the light. So you have light coming up early in the morning, for those of you who are early morning risers. Then we have the midday light, which is sometimes can get kind of flat and boring. And then we have the evening, late afternoon and evening, twilight, and all these different lighting conditions offer multiple opportunities to photograph maybe even the same subject during different times of the day. So here's 2 images from Lily from the past years. The first one here is the old pump house, and it used to, and it still does, I guess, pump water up, and it was like for the town, and I'm taking it underneath the canopy, the front porch of the old Skelly service station. So this was taken a few years ago. The service station sign, the Skelly sign that you see there, was stolen, unfortunately, which kind of diminishes the effect. But the pump house is still there, and that front porch is still there, and those gasoline filling tanks are still there also. So as you can tell by looking at the photograph, the sun is coming up in the morning, and there's a nice sunlight on the old pump house across the street, and then there's shadow. So now that I thought was a really good time to catch the light also on the Skelly sign that has now been stolen. Later in the day, it all looks a little different, and then in the nighttime, it's going to look different again. So I would still photograph the pump house throughout the day, but I would do it maybe in different angles, not necessarily from the angle that I chose with this particular picture. Now, another photograph also taken from Lily and somewhat recently is an old abandoned house very close by to where we stay. And again, it was early in the morning, so that sun is coming up and it creates a nice sense of texture across the weathered boards. And so I could help exaggerate sort of not only the texture, but the sense of the abstraction in the facade of the old doorway and porch there. Now, another example here of some photographs that I took, and I always love to go to old churches. And I see these churches throughout the North Dakota, South Dakota, even Minnesota, Wisconsin, and I'm always drawn to take pictures of them. Sometimes they're abandoned and I can actually go inside. So this one church that you see in this photograph shows the little road that leads up to this church. It's out in Bentley, North Dakota, which has a population of just like Lily of probably about 2 or 3. And just like Lily, this town, Bentley, North Dakota, existed because of the rail lines and the harvesting of grains and picking it up from the farmers. So once the railroads disappeared, so did the town. Anyway, now on this particular day, the light was very flat, very even. There wasn't a lot of contrast anywhere, and so it was kind of a hazy day, as I recall. So really, it is the darkness of the church, the old weather church. It used to be white. Of course, all that white paint has been, blown off by the sun and the wind, and it's that road that leads you up to the church that I tried to emphasize. And it requires a little bit of, when I printed, a little bit of contrast. You had to add contrast because of the flatness of the light. Now that same church, on a different day, later in the afternoon, shows a window and the side of the church, the old Bentley church. And through that window, you can see that the front door is open and the light is shining through. So you have a nice interplay of the deep shadows inside the church, plus the light coming through the door, and then the texture of the wind-blasted paint that still remains on the church itself. When you go inside these churches, they're empty. The pews are usually gone. Sometimes the altar is still up there. The crosses are all gone. But these old churches still have at least to me, I get a sense of awe and reverence as I've entered a sacred site. Now, another church that I photographed, and this is in Mapleton, Minnesota. This was a few years ago. My sister-in-law was leading me to various churches and sites throughout the area, and this is in Blue Earth County. So we came upon this church, and I shot one picture where I showed the whole church, just a sort of a document, and then I realized that door was really cool. So I got up close and realized that the light, and this would have been probably late morning. So not early in the morning, but a little late morning, and the light was shining through the stained glass up above, which you don't see, but you can see the reflection of it on the inner foyer where people walk in and leave their boots and coats before they enter the church itself. So the old church door at Mapleton, Minnesota is another example of having nice texture of the wood and enhanced by the quality of the light. So far I've been talking a little bit about early morning light, but there's that late afternoon light, and sometimes you can get a wonderful effect of backlighting. So on one of my travels out west in the Minnesota Valley, there was a huge harvest of sunflowers coming up, and the sun was kind of getting low in the horizon, and that backlighting caused all the sunflowers to sort of glow, and then in the bottom middle area, a little shaft of light shows some of the weeds all nice and crispy. So that backlighting can be also of a great asset in your summer photography. So speaking of travels now, when you travel, you come to a place and it is what it is in terms of the lighting, time of day. You just, you never know. So you have to accept with what you got and do the best you can. So I was driving along in southwest United States, someplace, Arizona, New Mexico, I don't know, can't remember, it was a long time ago. And for some reason I got off at this remote section of the freeway. and maybe it was to get my bearings or make a cup of coffee or have some water. And then I looked out and saw this old abandoned car, and I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. And I thought, well, maybe I should drive closer and get a picture of it. And then I realized, well, you know, what's really interesting as I stood and looked was that sense of scale, because, you know, I'm from Minnesota and we have a lot of trees, we got lakes, and when you're going out to the American Southwest, suddenly you're confronted with vast amounts of space that seem endless. Well, back then it really was, although there's probably a lot of McDonald's there at this time. But anyway, back then it was completely desolate. I saw that old abandoned auto, and then I also noticed how, even though the light was kind of flat because it was midday, how that railing of that freeway entrance, the little guard there, was really shiny, and then the juxtaposition between that and the black stones that you know, was part of its base gave me an idea for a composition. And then plus the distant mountains and the freeway leading you off into the space. So I thought that was a good example of how when you arrive at a place and you say, oh, I wish I had better light, well, you may never come back again and to that place. So you might as well just do the best you can, make the best you can out of an environment like that. You know, I'm getting a little thirsty looking at all these desert pictures and things like that. So let's go up to the northern Minnesota. One of my favorite parks there that I used to go and photograph a lot was Jay Cook Park. Jay Cook Park has a river going through it called the St. Louis River, and in the spring it's a torrent, and then in the summer it kind of goes way down so you can actually kind of walk into the river. And this photograph here I call the White Rocks was taken on kind of a cloudy, hazy day, you know, kind of, I'd say cloudy bright, you know. So plenty of light, but not real harsh light. So there's a soft light and shadow on the rocks, and the water, which was very still, is kind of almost black. You can see some reflections in it. So that's a good example. Jay Cook Park, which is about 2.5 hours, 3 hours from my house. You know, I have to go up there and I have to choose the time of day, either early morning when there's going to be, you know, less sunlight, or accept the whole day and stay there all day long, accept whatever happens. Another great park in Minnesota is the Gooseberry. Now, Gooseberry Falls is the most popular park in Minnesota. And you've got some beautiful falls there. Again, in the spring, it's a torrent. And then you go later in the summer, and then they're more beautiful and attractive. But a lot of people go there all the time. So when I go in the summer, I always try and get there as early as I can in the morning, so that there's less people. There's still a lot of people. And then if you're lucky enough to get a campsite, then you can take advantage of the late afternoon, early evening. I call it the silver roots on the shore of Lake Superior, showing this stump of this tree that's been weathered and truncated, and then all the roots. An example there of that late afternoon light coming in at an angle. And you know, if I hadn't been up there camping, I might not have gotten that picture because I'd be heading back to Minneapolis or back to a hotel or whatever. So being on site, I think, is of great advantage for taking advantage of the type of light early morning or late afternoon. Now I think I'll finish up with one more photograph from Lily. And this is a kind of an interesting photograph. It shows your favorite camera person and director and occasional cameo actress here on the series, Laura Sargent. She's on the prowl here. She's out there taking pictures in this little town near Lily, and they still had some grain elevators there. And but the light was behind me, and so it's very, very flat. I forget whether she was just holding that or I told her to go in that position, but I like the way that her body, which is dark, is offset by the glow of the light falling on the steel of the storage tanks. Anyway, so the lighting is very flat, which is what, you know, late afternoon light is, and what you have to do is raise the contrast of your print. So indeed, to make it look good, otherwise it gets kind of a grayish appearance. You can make it light, you can make it dark, you can make it middle gray, but it looks kind of blah. So raising the contrast when you're making the print can be very helpful in getting a final product. So there's just some examples, about 10 images here for you to consider as examples of different type of light for summer photography. The beautiful thing about summer photography is that you can go out at any time of the day or evening, and you are unmolested by the extreme cold of the Minnesota winter. In Minnesota, when we have a beautiful, bright, clear blue sky in the middle of the winter, it's often really cold. So that's the trade-off. Summer, you got a lot more opportunities, so take advantage of it and stay hydrated and wear a hat. And don't forget your dark glasses. So kids, signing out. Troopers beyond belief. Stormtroopers.
Ah! This umbrella doesn't want to fold. This is a cool umbrella.
It's an odd umbrella, but it does work. Oh, you got to get the click there.
Where did you get it? It's kind of
Oh, it just came from Target or something. I'm going to head back to base camp.